Welcome to the 7th video in the 10 Reasons You Need Fusion series. And this is where Fusion really comes into its own with 3D environments. Fusion allows you to work in real 3D space with multiple cameras, lights, projectors, image planes and shapes. For example, you can import FBX objects to speed up compositing time without the need for further mats to be rendered by the 3D department. In fact, Fusion gives you the ability to build whole 3D environments and objects from a base set of primitives, freeing up the 3D guys, if necessary, to work on more complex material. There is no end to the creative and time-saving possibilities with this subject, and in this video I'm going to touch on just a few examples that will hopefully inspire you to try out Fusion for yourself.
So what I've got here is a shape tool, and from that I've selected a basic sphere. As I move around it, you can see that it's transparent, and that's because as its source I've selected some fast noise, which gives it a random transparency. I want to put some more shapes inside the sphere, so in addition I've created a small cylinder. At this stage I can duplicate any of the shapes and quickly build up my final composite. So here is the cylinder duplicated and now merged inside the sphere. And then I've duplicated the cylinder again and combined that. Let's duplicate that combination to produce first a row of 4 of them, which I could increase or decrease if I so wished, and then 16, and finally a block of 64. Notice how fast I can create and move around inside my 3D environment. Everything is really responsive, and that's crucial from a compositor's point of view. Now I have my duplicated shapes, I can move on to the next stage and add in these 2 lights plus a camera move. Pulling back a little, you can see the camera that I have set up, which I have targeted at the center of the object. Adding in a render node, I then get a result that looks like this. That's a fairly simple example, but have a look at this one, which uses exactly the same techniques that I've been showing, but in addition has all sorts of shadows, reflections and lighting effects. It's amazing what can be achieved in quite a short space of time. So the challenge was to create some solar thermal panels and then show the viewer what they might look like on the roof of their house. Basically, I built the whole thing out of primitives. Starting with a simple plane at the bottom on which to build my house, I then added a cube followed by various other shapes to create the roof space, the roof itself, and a chimney. Once again, using duplicate, I was then able to create an entire village, which you can see here as I move around it. As far as the solar panels were concerned, I created a group here which, if I open it up, reveals the various components inside. One of the glass tubes, which has been made slightly transparent by again using fast noise as a source, duplicated once more, and then with a frame round it, duplicated yet again, and the whole thing positioned on the roof of one of the houses. Finally, I've added lights and a camera move to produce the finished result, which looks like this. This is a great example of where I had to produce something really quickly for a program and didn't have the time or budget to go out to CG. Fusion in this particular instance being a real lifesaver. Just moving away from primitives and onto something that's really powerful, I want to turn to the import of FBX meshes into Fusion. To illustrate this, I've created a quick composite here that we're going to go through. First, I have some stock footage, which you can see in the left-hand window, and fed that into a 3D image plane. I've also used a spotlight to create a vignette on that image plane. If I pull back a little, there you can see the spotlight, which will mix the whole thing away into a black background. Now I'm going to bring in an FBX mesh of a car, which I've just imported from an external source, and we can see exactly what that looks like roughly composited over the top. It's worth pointing out that the FBX has come in as a solid model, but if I adjust the opacity and alpha channel sliders, I can create some really nice transparency effects like this. We'll leave it semi-transparent for now and continue on. One other thing I'm going to do is use a second piece of stock footage which looks like this, and on this occasion use a projector. This is a fantastic capability since I can project any source footage on top of any other object or model, which is what we have here. So now if I project that over the car and see what the result is, you get something like this. Adding in a camera move, I get my finished result. The example I have here is of a still frame which might, in an edit suite, just have had a simple rostrum move applied to it. A more interesting solution is to separate the picture out into layers and then work with those elements in a full 3D environment. What I've done here is to use the Paint tool in Fusion to create a blank background by cloning parts of the shot to cover up the woman. I've also separated out the woman herself in a second layer by creating a mask and then once again used a clone tool to get rid of the makeup brush. Finally, the third layer separates out the hand itself, again with a mask. I've then combined all those with 3D image planes into a 3D environment. Looking at this and moving round it, you can see the 3 image planes and the space between them. Applying a camera to the scene and then pulling back a little, you can see the camera itself, which has been targeted at the center. Always much easier to manipulate the shot when you do that, giving you maximum flexibility. And if I switch from perspective view to camera view, there we get the parallax effect we are after, with the 3 planes, the background, the woman, and the hand with the brush. Rendering that out ultimately gives a much more dynamic and interesting result with a certain degree of depth, all created from a single still frame. Continuing on this theme, I'm going to show you a couple of really amazing examples of the use of multiple projectors and cameras in a full 3D environment. The first of these starts again with just a still frame. A simple street scene here, which obviously I can zoom in and out of, but of course currently remains a flat 2D plane. The first task was to build up the back of the street by copying and pasting the low building and turning it into more of a high-rise that gets rid of the skyline. Color correction was next, as the street was corrected from day to night and some lights in the windows added courtesy of a soft glow. Now comes the really clever bit, since the street is then rebuilt in full 3D using multiple cameras and image planes together with the original 2D street scene as a source. So we have the side walls, the end wall and the road itself all taken from the same source still frame. So switching to the 3D merge tool that combines all that and looking at the perspective view, this is what we get. If I move around now, you begin to get a feel for what is happening here. I can now travel down the road itself and get a pretty convincing result already. Pulling up a little and looking down into the scene, you get a clearer idea as to how it's been put together. It's obvious that these are flat planes in 3D space, but once you apply a camera to the scene, and if I switch to a different viewpoint, here is the camera with a move already established, the effect really starts to take off. Now I'm going to switch to the camera's point of view and take a look at the final output. I think you'll agree what I have here is a pretty amazing result. As a nice final touch, I have some text which has been projected over the top of the whole thing, and since we are working in a full 3D environment, the projection naturally follows the contours of the street that has been created. A real-world example of the technique can be seen in this shot from the movie Anonymous. Pretty much the whole castle has been generated here with image planes and multiple cameras, with massive time savings in set design and set extension.
Hopefully you'll have been inspired by what you've just seen with the 3D environments capability of Fusion. It really is a phenomenal toolset, giving you everything you need in the way of camera, lights, projector images, planes and shapes. Add in the capability to import FBX and OBJ files, and then the possibilities just get even better. And it's not just the creative possibilities that are worth looking at here. There is also the matter of time savings for your 3D department. No longer do you always have to call them up for an extra map pass. More often than not, you can generate it yourself within Fusion. Just a better workflow all round. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be going through 3D workflow and stereo. Meanwhile, don't forget to take a closer look at our website at www.ionline.com, plus the Ion YouTube channel, where you can find a whole host of news, events, and information that will show you why Ion Software is a world leader in compositing.